welcome to the Post-Human Podcast.
So today's guest, filmmaker, musician, author, and I would say psychedelic expert, Jimi Fritz. So how are you today, sir?
Excellent, thanks. How are you doing? Greetings from Vancouver, Canada, where the men are men and the moose are nervous.
That's a great introduction. I've had a few people from Canada. That's the best introduction from Canada so far.
All right.
So you've got a book out. I spoke about it tonight. I just did a previous live guest show, and it came up in the pre-show. Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer. That's your new book, I believe.
That's correct.
Should we get straight into that? Because it's to me, it's a very, very great title. I've already plugged it once tonight. The title itself, I love it because it's to some people they'll go, how can you be an ethical drug dealer? Well, I used to be one myself, so let's talk about yours. Let's talk about your experience.
Yeah, well, it's a intentionally provocative title because, of course, drug dealer has a lot of baggage with it. The term, you think of people selling drugs on the street or whatever, and all the problems with addictive drugs and whatnot. This is a complete other side of the coin. So this was one of the intentions of this book, was to present a more realistic view of drug use, and in particular psychedelic drug use. And that's really the differentiation, is that I've never sold anything like coke or crack or opiates or any of the addictive drugs, and I call them smart drugs and dumb drugs.
Yep, I agree with that.
Smart drugs are the ones that increase your perception and awareness of the world and therefore improve the quality of your life.
Yep.
And dumb drugs are ones that decrease your perception and awareness of the world, usually to mask other problems because you want to get out of it rather than into it. And so it's a completely different, it's done for completely different reasons by completely different people. And I've only ever been associated with people that use psychedelic drugs responsibly, and they use it to enhance and improve the quality of their lives.
So, I mean, because again, most people, and it's kind of wild because one of the main things that I love is psychedelics. I've pretty much done every drug under the book. You can put it in if you put most of them in a book. There's a few that I've not done. PCP. I've not really done that. Someone once said it was PCP. I am an ex drug addict, but I occasionally would do psychedelics. Still occasionally do in microdosing. But most people do associate drug dealing with hard drugs, and they don't really actually go, hey, well, some of it is actually extremely beneficial. And one thing I've found lately is it's harder to taint and make synthetic drugs out of psychedelics, because psychedelics are psychedelics. So as an example, most people nowadays, you buy cocaine, it's got fentanyl. Most things are always cut with something, whereas you can't really do that so much with psychedelics. You can cut some.
That was one of the main reasons why I started actually dealing. I'm an ex-dealer, by the way.
Yeah. No.
But the reason that I did it for so long is because I wanted to get a good, safe, reliable supply for friends of mine, because everybody I knew was interested in psychedelics and they were all using them responsibly. They were all adults. A lot of my customers used to be doctors, lawyers, professional people, teachers or whatever.
Academics, yeah.
And they wanted to get, something that was safe and reliable. So I worked at that and got close to some sources which were very, very pure and very, very safe. And that was my original impetus for starting to disseminate drugs. And
what did you originally start with?
Well, I first started when I was 15 years old, and I tried hashish for the first time.
Oh wow, okay. I tried hash for the first time. Okay.
Yeah, I thought this stuff is great. I need some more of this. So I bought a quarter ounce, 7 grams.
Yep.
I'd sell 3 of them and then smoke 2. So
Nice.
at first it was just a way of getting free hash.
Yeah, that's a pretty good deal.
Then as I went along, I got into larger amounts and, built up a network of people. And I've always dealt something throughout my life. I retired recently after writing this book, because I wrote this book, of course, it's very confessional, as in the title.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I quit before I published the book.
What was the first psychedelic that you took?
First tree. Well, I mean, unless you count cannabis and hash.
Yeah.
But the first thing, and it was LSD, and I did a massive dose, and I didn't actually know. This was when I was probably 16, and I didn't even know what it was. And I was just at the pub one night. This was in the early 70s, and somebody said, "Oh, you want to buy a trip, man?" And I said, "Okay." It was this tiny little purple microdot.
Microdot, yeah.
Which I found out afterwards was the purple microdot. It was like 300 or 400 mics of really good acid. So it was a bit much to start with. And I didn't even know about LSD at the time. I had no idea about the effects. And I had the most horrendous trip you could possibly have. And that was, I included that in the book as a kind of a balance, because this is what happens if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're taking, and you haven't prepared at all, you have no intent, whatever, completely irresponsible psychedelic drug use. So that's the way it starts, with that experience. And then the rest of the 50 years of experiences were nothing but positive. So that was really the only negative psychedelic effect that I ever had, was that first trip. And, again, it's because it was totally unprepared and didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Well, I mean, even then, I'm almost kind of on the same path. I was smoking at the age of 12. I went on to cannabis and hash at 13. But it was hash to begin with, because I could only get that in the UK as a child. Weed didn't quite hit till maybe 2-3 years later. So I smoked hash for a bit, and then by the time I was about 16, I could get cannabis. And then I mainly, when I was dealing with stuff, it was mainly in ecstasy. And I remember the first time I had any form of psychedelic there was pills. I used to get love hearts mainly, which made you feel amazing. But I had some pills once that were very cut with acid. And I spoke about it on one of my previous shows, and I just remember staring into this fireplace that wasn't on. It was completely pitch black, and I was staring into a fireplace, and there were some candles behind me, and it was like almost like a weird projection-esque. It was a weird reflection, but it was so visual in my face, and it was only a mild form, and that was my first sort of real thing. But after that, it was microdots. And one of my friends put one on his eye once, which was very wild. We all got very fucked up, and one of my friends was one of these reckless characters. I'm not going to shout him out. He had a bunch of wild tales. But he was a reckless cat, and he put a microdot on his eye once, and it was fucking crazy. The dude, I'm actually surprised that he didn't lose his eye.
It would take a while for it to dissolve, I would think.
Yeah,
really
it did.
They were like a piece of hard plastic.
Yeah, it did take a while. And that was what was. I remember he was walking around with it for about an hour and 45 minutes, and he was getting stuck in his eyelid and shit, and he was complaining for a while. But then, honestly, we was walking around getting beers and drinks. We was all fucked up by this point, and he was just complaining. I think he was trying to do do you know when people used to put a bottle in their eye and do that? He was trying to replicate that with a psychedelic experience, which was stupid. We were like, it's not going to work, and if anything, but yeah, eventually
it actually does work with liquid acid. I
put a
drop of liquid acid in one of my eyes once.
Ooh.
At an after party, and just put one drop, which is 100 mics. It's a standard dose. And I just dripped it in my eye to see what the effect would be and how fast it would come on. It's pretty instant, because there's a lot of very fine capillaries in your eyes, so it absorbs into your system almost instantly. But it stings like hell, because it's it's diluted in vodka. So it's like dripping hard liquor into your eye.
Well,
So it stinks like hell, but it gets you there fast.
that's what he was trying to do, but it just got stuck, and eventually it did dissolve, and he was mangled. He was really fucked up. He was a wild card. Um, you got any crazy stories? I mean, I always like to segue. I've got a bunch of questions and stuff, but I always like to sort of segue into things. And while we're on the subject of stories, have you got any really crazy ones?
Well,
From
I
way
guess
back.
liquid acid into the eye would count, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I've had a lot of very powerful experiences, mostly kind of inspirational and as positive experiences. Very few. I mean, I've had, like I say, the only negative experience I've ever had on psychedelics was
Yeah,
that
no, I
first
mean,
acid trip.
like, so as an example, like, as a start to finish moment, like, again, that night that I did the microdots in, I remember going back to a friend's house. Everything when I was walking around heavily distorted, all fucked up. But I remember going back to my friend's house and I was lying on his bed. We was all lying. Everyone was fucking sprawled out. It was all fucked up. And I remember having this weird sort of visual of this chandelier that sort of almost came and broke apart in a weird fashion. And it was for a mild second, and then as I fucking snapped back into it, it was like, whoa, you know? Huge weird out of body fucking moments, that's what I'm sort of, getting at in terms of
Well, that
experiences.
first trip that I had was very, very extreme. Because, like I said, I didn't know what was going on. So, at one point, I thought I was insane, and that I would never be normal again. And I kind of was trying to come to terms with that. Another part of the experience was I thought I was a lizard.
Mm.
And I turned into a lizard, and my whole throat, I was touching my throat, and there was this huge warty dewlap
Mm.
that I was playing with. I couldn't touch my neck for about 18 months after that
Wow, that's
because
freaky,
it would
bro.
bring it back. If I touched my
Yeah,
neck, I'd
yeah.
feel this warty dewlap
Ooh,
and
I
flash
know what
back
the
to
feeling
being a lizard.
is.
And then at one point, I thought I was dead. And I thought, okay, well, I must have died. And because nothing, that nothing, in a conscious state could be this, this far from
From
consciousness.
reality, yeah,
So
yeah.
I must have been dead. So then I was coming to terms with that. Like, okay, this is what being dead is like. This is the world now for me forever. And how am I going to deal with it? So all these things were going on. It was a really, really it was a terrifying experience. And it went on and on and on, of course, because it lasted for like 10 or 12 hours. And when I finally came back to Earth, it was like being reborn again. I was just so glad to be alive. I didn't touch anything for about 2 years after that.
One of the moments I had, I mean, this is why I love this show, just because of stories. And I love talking about drug tales. Everyone always loves them. It's one of the first times that I'd ever done acid. I remember a lot of us were camping out. I'd lost so many belongings during this fucking camp out. I'd also, there was like 4 or 5 of us. I think there was 4. And I abandoned ship at some point. I was just, I mean, it was a bunch of, it was pretty dark, but the sky was purplish. It looked like there was fucking shit going tree to tree, like monkeys and shit. And like I kept going inside this fucking tent. I was like, man, I don't like this shit at all. And I remember sitting in there, and for about 45 minutes, and I used to do mapping. So, and by that I mean I used to do like make maps for games, mostly Unreal Tournament, and this was way back when. And I remember sitting there in this tent, and I was typing away as if I was on my computer, and there was nothing there. And I remember sitting there looking at a screen, a keyboard, and I was doing a whole mess of stuff. And then one of my friends was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just mapping." And they're like, "No, you're out camping, man. What are you fucking doing?" And then I've looked around, snapped out of it, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And then I abandoned ship. Um, went to walk home. Thought that the friend that was camping with me went home, so I knocked on his door. During all this time, there was a bunch of trees and bushes, and I thought there was some weird predator style shapes in there. So I was smashing it in with like sticks, like literally, and it was about 5 in the morning, just wailing on these bushes with sticks because of these fucking predator style dogs. And then I went home, slept for about what would have been 14 hours. Turns out it was 3. Went to my boss's house. And then he knew because he was a previous drug addict. He let me in, and I slept on his sofa, woke up, and then he got the rest of the tale. You know,
So I think these are cautionary tales about
they
doing
are.
too much.
It,
And frequency and dosage is absolutely essential when you're doing
I
psychedelics.
don't
And
necessarily think it was too much. I think it was my age. I think that's the cautionary tale. I think it was primarily my age. I think my brain hadn't quite. Again, your brain doesn't stop getting to its potential till you're in your 20s. You know, it doesn't completely form. And I think that was one of the big things that I did too much. This is why when I look back on it, some of it's funny, some of it I can go, "Wow, that is fucked up. I don't know how I did that and survived it." Um, but I know when I look back on it, I wouldn't want anyone else to go through it. You know, I
but if
wouldn't.
you'd done half the dose, you'd probably have had a quite different experience. Or a
Yeah,
quarter of the dose, you'd have had a really nice social time with your friends.
yeah, that is the thing as well. But I mean, the problem is when you're a kid, it's always like you want to go full tilt, so it's always hard to go, hey, we need to do this and that. You know, but that's what people should do, and
Of course.
that's what people rarely forget is that sometimes it's like when you're having edibles. You know, people go, "Oh, I'll eat that bag of gummies." You shouldn't do that. You know, you're gonna mess yourself up. The same way in which you said psychedelics. You know, with cannabis, it is a psychedelic. You know, you eat 10 edibles, you're gonna dance with the devil. You know, you're gonna do some fucked up shit.
Yeah. That's been a big problem here. Canada legalized the recreational use of marijuana. It's one of the second countries in the world that have done so, um, as well as Uruguay.
Mm.
But when they did that and they started selling edibles, they were just way too strong. And it's not an advantage to make an edible super delicious, and make it into gourmet ice cream or fantastic
Yeah,
chocolate
yeah,
bars
yeah.
because people just want to eat more and more because they enjoy eating it. But a lot of people were just ODing.
There's a recent mushroom chocolate bar in some states of America, I believe, and on the bar it says not for human consumption. But obviously it's like a psilocybin mushroom bar, and it's
Yeah,
chocolate.
that's for legal purposes. If they put it's not for human consumption, then they're
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
licensed. Somebody
But
gets into a problem with it.
you know, there's so many ways that you can just distribute it through your system, and it's kind of crazy, you know. I mean, again, I'm not even pro drug. You know, most of the stuff that I used to take, I'm like, you just shouldn't do it. Um,
Well, some drugs are a lot more useful than other drugs, and
yeah,
but
they
you
are.
still have to learn how to use them properly and how to use
Yeah,
them
yeah.
responsibly and how to use them to get the best effects from them. And it's not hard to do that now with the internet and all the information that's available. There's no reason for people to be ODing on everything. If you just look it up before you do it, you'll find a lot of good information. There's a great site called erowid.org.
I'm on there. I've been on
It's
there a couple of
probably the best drug resource on the
yeah, they're
internet.
very good.
It's been going for a long, about
Yeah,
25
yeah.
years
I
now.
think that was like one of the first internet sites as well for mushrooms.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, that was way back when and dial-up times.
yeah. No, they've been around a long time, but it's a great resource for people to check out if they want to try, especially
One,
some of these new research chemicals. So you have to figure out what the dosage is because
yeah.
they're all over the map. Some of them are active in very tiny amounts, and some of them you need to take more. But you should always start low and then work your way up.
What's your thoughts on fly agarics? Because people have a very mixed opinion on those. Some people will go, it's very toxic and it'll kill you, and then you go, yeah, but that's what gets you fucked up, you know. Um,
Well, the problem with fly agaric is there's lots of mushrooms that are much better. The cubensis mushrooms are much better.
yeah, yeah,
There's 114 different mushrooms that contain psilocybin, and fly agaric is one of them. But it's very easy. They're problematic because they do have toxins in them, and they can really hit
fuck
your
you,
system
yeah,
hard. And why bother when there's 50 other species that are much better effects and less problems.
What's one
So
of
it's
your
just
favorite mushrooms? I mean, I'm a big fan of microdosing when I can. Um, I'm a huge fan of mushrooms. I was trying to grow some at one point, but I didn't have the right conditions.
it's
What's some of
quite
your?
difficult.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not. I kind of think I got dubbed with a fucking shit bag of spores. To be honest, I normally go and pick them. It is roughly mushroom season now, but I've just not had the time. And you know, what's one of your favorite mushrooms? Because you get so many varieties, and some people now are breeding them hybridly, which is kind of strange.
The most common species around here for commercial use is the Mexican cubensis.
Okay,
Oh, there's Amazonias too.
yeah,
Sometimes we
Am-
have
Amazonia is what I was doing. The Amazonia PES. That's
yeah,
that.
Golden
Yeah,
Teachers is another one that's quite popular. Golden Teachers are very good, and one called Penis Envy.
yeah. I was going to see. I've looked at all of those. I was going to get the golden teachers. I think personally, why I fucked up was because the Amazonias that you need some hefty right conditions, and I think I just jumped in a bit too soon. I mean, I'd
Yeah,
like. I mean, sometimes part of my brain goes, "Yeah, they fucked you on the spores," but I go, "Nah, they didn't. You just grew them wrong, you fucking fool." you know,
no, they're really hard to. I
they
grew
are difficult.
some Amazonias once, and we got the spores, and we sterilized the grain and did the mycelium in an autoclave and try to keep it as sterile as possible. But we got the green mold and the blue mold and the black mold and the this
You,
mold and the bread mold and almost everything. You're creating a perfect environment for spores. And there are spores in the app. So unless you have absolutely, meticulous sterile conditions, it's very, very easy to get contaminated. And once you're contaminated, everything grows better than everything takes over better than the
well,
actual
I
mushrooms.
mean, the small grow tent bag is still there, and it's still got everything in it. There's like stuff going on, and I'm hoping that I was like when it sort of looked contaminated, I was like, let's just leave it and see what happens. So I've just left it. I'm hoping that it will turn into some weird truffles under it.
There's
Yeah, I'm hoping. That's the wish and thought.
there's lots of kits you can get now. You can buy mycelium in a bag and start with
Yeah,
that.
it's just being from. Obviously, I'm in the UK, so they're a little bit. They haven't quite got it fully out there yet. I think we're
No,
almost there, but we're not quite there. What about DMT? Have you ever tried that?
oh yeah. The big thing around here lately is DMT vape pens.
Yeah, is that what you vaping?
Yeah, it's in a vape, and it's just in you get a half gram or a 1 gram in there. They last forever, and it's a fantastic way of dosing it because you just suck on the vape. So you don't have to deal with smoking mixtures and not burning it properly and the dosage and whatnot. You can take a tiny little hit and get a little flutter and a little little buzz, or you can take a couple of hits and have a big buzz, or you can take 3 or 4 hits and go to the moon and back.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very, very easy to dose, and it's a really good way of doing it. I think
What
the vape pen
extremes have
is
you
the way
gone
to
to
go.
with DMT? Because DMT is a very fascinating subject for a lot of people. Primarily just because of consciousness, and some people put some conspiracy to it with higher planes and different dimensions. And but one
Yeah, I
thing
think
that
that's problematic.
yeah, that's the other thing. It's like when people talk about clockwork elves and stuff like that. Have you heard
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Have you ever had any?
Ayahuasca machine elves.
Yeah, have you ever heard? Have you ever had any experiences like that? Just while we're on the subject.
Well, it is an experience like that, but it doesn't mean it's real. Um, it's a psychological effect,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's based and you conjure up whatever's in your experience and your background.
I know that the
So
propaganda machine can make you feel that way, if that makes sense. If there was 100 people in a room and one person said something, it spreads. you know,
yeah,
it,
it does. I mean, it does. I understand how it happens because it does feel like you're in another universe, or you've gone through to another dimension, or you've entered a different plane of consciousness. But actually, it's all just happening in your brain. and that's not to diminish the experience. That's the, it's just as inspirational, and it's just as, incredible, with a rational explanation. And I think it's problematic in psychedelics generally now that people are spinning off into all these like supernatural explanations. I don't think it's really useful to the prolonged use of psychedelics. I think we need to understand them for what they are. They're catalysts that operate in your brain, and they
Yep.
activate neurotransmitters that give you a different experience of your own brain. But you're not going to another dimension or another
No,
planet or anywhere else.
no, I know
It
what you're
just
saying.
feels like that.
Well, that's the thing is, some people can't comprehend what's going on in their head, so they'll go, hey, well, this must be what it is, because they can't grasp what it is. It's so out of the box. I've been there myself. Like I say, I've had tons of wild moments where I have gone overboard, and I shouldn't have. But that's just most of those times were just because I've always liked to push things to the limits, and now being the age that I am, I regret absolutely pretty much all of it. I've got a bunch of funny stories, that's cool, but in terms of mental health and overall health, just pushing everything razor edge, it's not the way to go. It's why I microdose now. It's just psychedelics. I mean, I quit stuff many years ago, many years ago. Um, but the thing that I love about psychedelics is that you can get slight gains off it. Like I say, you have this DMT pen, and that people don't realize how beneficial that is for mental health.
Yeah, if you
Um,
use it responsibly
yeah,
and
if
the
you use it
correct dosage
responsibly,
and
yeah.
frequency, then they're very powerful tools. And if you just gobble them until the walls melt, then they're really not very useful at all.
That well, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's people even then. It's like the people that put the hand sanitizer that was 100% alcohol into jails, and then expected them to just use it on their hands rather than drink it. You
Hmm.
know, it was like, hey, wait, but you can almost put that same way in which with a pen, you can. I've had cannabis pens, and I've gone, well, sometimes I do like to get a bit fucked up myself. Um, but that's just with cannabis and mild alcohol. If I'm doing psychedelics, I know how to handle them responsibly. I don't do anything other than that. Even then, it's been I'm not saying a very long time. A microdose. I've got a horn that I drink out of that has a bunch of residue in that I don't ever wash it. Just building up a whole bunch of stuff, and that gives a mild effect. Um, but people should be using stuff responsibly. And do you delve much into that with your book? Because I've not had a chance to read it yet.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much the whole thrust of the book is
Yeah.
how to use psychedelics responsibly and for maximum benefit.
I mean, that's again. I do need to read it. I've not had chance. Most of the time, I've had a lot of authors on the show. A couple I've had chance to read beforehand because they've sent me like a proofread before they've released it or whatever. Um, but I've just not had chance due to the fact that just time constraints and whatever. But it will be a read that I'm definitely going to do. Have you ever
Yeah.
thought about doing audiobooks of it? Just while we're on the subject of being an author,
Um,
because
Not really, because it would, it's too expensive to do an audiobook. And then at the end of the day, are you going to sell enough to, cover the costs and make a profit? And I
I've,
decided probably not.
but have you ever thought about doing like chapters maybe on YouTube where you just maybe read it yourself because you're very articulated. I could listen to your voice all day, sir. And I could. This is another reason why I say it. When I listen to books, especially from authors that I like personally, and then occasionally someone comes on and they've got an audiobook and I'll listen to that. I always like to hear their voice rather than somebody else narrating it.
Yeah, if I
And
did an audio book, I would read it myself for sure.
yeah,
But
that's what I'd like.
like I said,
That's
it's a huge job. It's many, many, many hours of reading, and then many hours of editing,
editing. Yeah, yeah.
and then at the end of the day, it's very hard. I mean, even the print books and the ebooks are very hard to get noticed on the internet now with a book. You can put it out there as much as you want, and I have done that, repeatedly.
I love that. That was amazing. That was one of the most amazing responses I've ever seen. It was like, brr, boom.
Well,
That was brilliant.
John.
Yeah, God, I love that. That was amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
so no, it's very hard to sell books and audio books too. It's to get noticed. There's millions of books coming out all the time, and to try and get them noticed. I mean, I don't have any illusions about becoming a best-selling author because
yeah, yeah.
even though I'm getting great reviews and the people that read it really seem to rave about it, but
Well, I could
which is
imagine.
gratifying. I
Um,
wrote it more to share with friends and family and people that I know that my 50-year journey with psychedelics and travel. So I call it a psychedelic travelogue and memoir because it's a
that's a great
geographical and
title.
philosophical journey through the world and through psychedelic experiences. And so yeah, it's more or less to share that experience with people that I know. Whether a stranger reads it in Milwaukee is neither here nor there. So I don't have any. I am selling books, and I have I've more than broken even now. I'm into the profits, so and it's a great way to publish through. I publish through Ingram Spark, which disseminates through Amazon, all the Amazons and Barnes and Noble and Apple Books and iBooks and whatnot. So anybody can find the book by just typing in the title, Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer by Jimi Fritz, available at fine bookstores everywhere. And just
I always love a good plug. By the way, I always want people to plug their stuff. I always love it when they do.
and it's going to be
Usually
it's
more
going to be
often.
available, on the internet on print on demand and an ebook forever. So it's nice to have that. It's nice to have that availability. So if somebody's interested, I can say, well, just type in the name and get a book if you want. So I like to, it's great to have it available. But as for competing with millions of other books out there and trying to, sell a lot of books, it's pretty hard to do.
Well, that's occasionally where, I mean, to me, this is why I love getting you on my show. I mean, we spoke in like May, I believe, maybe in May, or was that
Mm.
earlier on?
Yeah, I can't remember.
It was. I don't know. Might have been May. No, sorry, that was somebody else. I've got somebody else coming on my show. That was in May. Sorry. But it was it was a fair few weeks ago. But it just intrigued me because I've never had anyone on to talk about psychedelics. I feel like personally I've almost approached it the wrong way. I feel like I should have got a bunch more different questions. Um, because and I feel that way just because I know normally I come at things with one angle or a different angle, which is sometimes I'll come at things where I've had a bit of a drink and I'll get fucked up and we'll talk some shit and get into things. But then occasionally I like to come in things professionally, and I think this should have been the professional angle. Have you seen my notes?
I think you
You,
might be right. Check your notes and pick out the more professional questions.
yeah. So it's all right. I don't know.
I wrote another book called Rave Culture. I was involved with rave culture for many years, and I was promoting raves. And I wrote
But
a
I
book
have got a
called,
bunch of questions about. Again, I've looked at all
yeah.
the biographical stuff. I just wanted
So
to.
that book is called Rave Culture: An Insider's Overview by Jimi Fritz, available at fine bookstores everywhere.
That's a great plug. Love it.
And people can also find all this stuff and also music. I've got 5 albums. I've
Yeah,
got
I've got it. I've got it here
26
on
music videos,
paper. You're ruining
and
my
they're
notes.
available at jimifritz.ca.
Oh no, it's amazing because I had that as notes. I was gonna again. I said musician at the start, and I was gonna get into
That's
the
okay. I'll
wild.
take care of it for you.
Thank you. I'm glad you took care of it.
That's
Before.
jimifritz.ca.
I'm glad you. I'm glad you shredded my notes in about 30
Mhm.
seconds flat. I actually love it. That was amazing. It was like any good questions. I was like, yeah, oh, well, I've got some, and then you was like, musicians with five. I've got it all written down here. Oh no, That's hilarious. So, if you had if you had any advice for modern day users of psychedelics, obviously within moderation, because a lot of people are microdosing now, um, but even then, some people could take it to the extremes. What advice would you be able to give them?
Well, so start low, start low and work your way up. It's better. I mean, the most common stories that you hear about LSD, for instance, is that somebody did a hit
Oh no,
and it
in
kind of didn't come up within 30
mushrooms
minutes. And so they
mostly.
did another hit, and then the walls are melting and they felt they were mad and dead, and they never did it again. So that's unfortunate. That's just an irresponsible. I mean, it's to use another analogy, it's a difference between, having a glass of wine with dinner and feeling lubricated and chatty, or drinking a 2 6er of hard liquor and puking and falling in a ditch. Those are two. That's the same drug. It's completely different effects. So I think the biggest lesson that the biggest cautionary lesson that I would say is that to start low. Start with a quarter of a hit. Do a quarter of a hit of acid and go for a walk in the woods with a couple of close friends. You'll have a wonderful experience. It'll open your mind to all kinds of possibilities. It will stimulate your imagination and creativity, and you'll have a positive effect. Then at a later date, you can increase the dose up to wherever you're comfortable.
What about
But
in
yeah, the
terms of
biggest mistake is people just do too much.
what about in terms of mushrooms? Because like I was saying, mushroom microdosing is the thing at the moment. That's the main thing that everyone. I mean, again, it works as a great antidepressant. There's a whole bunch of benefits. Even as like an antioxidant. With mushrooms, there's so many great benefits with mushrooms. Um,
Yeah.
what would I mean? Most people.
Microdosing is very big around here right now. People are microdosing with LSD and
I didn't know that was a thing that that they're doing that in Canada.
oh, it's huge. I know lots of people that are doing it, and it's because they've suffered from depression or anxiety or whatever for years, and they've
PTSD is
tried all the
one.
pharmaceuticals, nothing's worked, and they don't the SSRIs, the serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors, they work for some people, in more extreme cases, but generally speaking, they don't solve the problem. They just kind of waylay it
Mask
or
it.
mask it. So psychedelics seem to actually elevate your consciousness above those triggers and those getting stuck in the depression and anxiety. They sort of elevate you above it, and then you can take that forward. You don't have to keep doing it. Once you've reset your brain, you can actually cure the problem. So that's the benefits, and there's very few side effects and very few downsides to it. So it's safe and effective, and so why not give it a try, right?
Are you a fan of Paul Stamets?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
He's a mushroom expert.
yeah.
Knows a lot about mushrooms.
And Terence McKenna?
Not a fan of Terence McKenna.
No. What's the
No.
reasons behind that?
Well, Terence McKenna loves to come up with fanciful, wishful thinking and supernatural explanations for everything.
Oh,
He's the
okay.
guy that invented ayahuasca machine elves, and the DMT catapults you into a multiverse or another universe, or and all this stuff. He was the guy that came up with the stoned ape theory,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is completely, there's no evidence for that whatsoever, that human consciousness was propelled forward about 100,000 years ago by primitive man doing mushrooms. There's just no evidence for that. And he was also a big conspiracy theorist around the year 2000, with the Mayan calendar was coming to the end. He predicted the end of the world a couple of times and was completely wrong about that. So I just think, I think he's a brilliant mind in some ways, but he just goes off into these supernatural explanations for which there's no evidence. It's not science-based at all. It's complete fantasy land. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Terence McKenna.
No, I mean, some people aren't. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, again, yeah, even then it's a theory. Some people are like, oh, Darwinism, that's a theory. Some people
No,
don't
it's
like
not.
that. No, no,
It's not a theory.
no, but you know what I'm saying. Some people, it's the same.
No, I don't
people
think
that
it's the
think,
same thing at all. One is
really?
science-based and it's based on evidence, and the other is not. So they're actually diametrically opposed.
No, no. I just mean in terms of people's stupidity.
Well,
You
people
know,
will believe anything. I mean, let's face it,
there's people that believe the Earth's flat. That's
Right, but they're just wrong, aren't they?
yeah. No, occasionally I do like to fuck about with that crowd and just put some bullshit in there.
Mm.
I'm a part-time conspiracy theorist, but I like to fuck about with a mix. I like to throw some bullshit in there, but I know my own. I'm not stupid. I just like to piss around. Um, I mean, the only reason I like Terence McKenna is just because occasionally I like to delve into fantasy, and I like to go, and that's what you can almost put it to in some aspect.
That's
Some
fine
people
if you
can think it's
appreciate it
true.
as fantasy, then it's not a problem. If
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
if you appreciate it as a fiction and a fantasy, then that's fine. But when you start presenting it as scientific fact, that's a problem.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I just like to get people's takes on things. That's all
Yeah.
I like. I love to get people's takes on things. I love to get people's opinions. Because it gives people a great insight into not only my show but into people. You know.
Quick, give them
What?
one. There you go.
If you want to take it, I can edit it
No, no,
out.
no.
It's
I'm not
okay.
going to take it.
Honestly, I can edit it out. I don't mind.
That's
I
fine.
really don't mind. I've had wilder things happen on my show. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on? Obviously, in the UK, we haven't. We've still got every drug law. Do you think that we should follow suit?
Hmm.
We are the world's biggest supplier of medicinal cannabis as well, which is wild. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. But I think it's under that basis that we should at least legalize something.
No, I
Um,
mean the whole drug problem is we need to teach people to use them responsibly and beneficially, and figure out how to do that, not just ban everything. One of the problems with prohibition is because a lot of these drugs have been illegal for so long that we haven't been able to do research on them. People haven't been able to do legitimate research because they can't use the materials because they're illegal. So now they're becoming legal in lots of places. They're starting to do research and they're finding out that they have a lot of applications, and that's what we need to do. We need to do legitimate scientific research into these drugs, and not just you know fantasize about what they're good about, but actually find out. And
Obviously,
once we find out, they can be applied in that way.
sorry, yeah, you've got a DMT pen. You can get little hits off it. They do a ketamine version as well in the States, I believe. What's your thoughts on that?
Ketamine?
Yeah, they do a pen version of that where you can do sort of microdose versions of ketamine.
Yeah, to
Um,
me, ketamine is not really a recreational drug, but I think it can be a therapeutic drug. There's a program in Vancouver which is using ketamine to get people off harder drugs, get opiate addicts,
yeah,
heroin
yeah.
addicts, and whatnot. And they're using
People
it.
on benzos mainly, yeah.
Yeah, they're using it as a transitional drug for addicts to get them off more addictive drugs. And so that's all very recent research. So there have been there could be some therapeutic if something is used therapeutically and with the intent and alongside legitimate therapy, then they can be. I mean, ketamine puts you in a very somatic receptive state, and so therapy can then become a lot more effective. So it could be used in applications like that. But again, it's very early days, and there's very little research on it and very little information. So yeah, but it's not really a recreational drug.
No, but I mean, there's a lot again in the States. There's some places where you can again get crack and it's legal, which is pretty wild. I think it's what state is it? I don't know. There's a state that's just completely all open, and it was a surprise.
I haven't heard of crack being illegal anywhere.
Yeah, there's crack and heroin. It's a couple of months ago.
Well, heroin used to be legal in the UK in the 70s. They were giving it prescriptions.
Yeah,
I knew a
yeah.
dozen people on prescription heroin in the UK, and it completely solved the drug problem. People weren't stealing to get a fix. People weren't spending 24 hours of their time trying to find a fix. They got a prescription. They went to the chemist once a week, got their box of syringes and their little bottle of pills of pharmaceutical heroin, went back to their squat or whatever, and shut up. They didn't bother anybody.
I didn't even know that. That's wild.
Yeah, that was all through the 70s. I don't know why they stopped doing that, because it really solved the problem. We have a massive problem here in Vancouver. It's huge. Thousands of people are dying on the streets from overdoses of fentanyl. It's almost
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
everything sold as
Yeah.
heroin now is actually fentanyl, but
Fentanyl. Because they've
90%
laced cocaine with it now as well.
yeah, it can happen. So yeah, it's a big problem. But how do you solve it? You give people a prescription. If you're addicted to a drug, you treat it like a health problem. You give them a prescription, and they're not gonna have problems. They're not going to OD. They're not going to spread disease. They're not going to do crime. You take all that out of it.
Well, I'm all for that myself. I think everything should be completely legalized. I think it should be somewhat taxed because they have to make money and put it into a system because that is how the drug trade unfortunately works. But there has to be guidelines and regulations. But it's just so sort of. I mean, it is tricky to manipulate and manage to some aspect, but I think it's not entirely. It's not undoable. You know,
Wherever they've tried it, it's worked.
yeah. I
So I
mean,
don't know what the resistance is. I think
yeah.
there's a puritanical type of streak that runs through our
I mean,
society, which says that people shouldn't be getting high.
I don't know why they don't do it in the UK. It's a no-brainer because recently I learned that Amsterdam were trying to. This was pre-COVID. I don't know what they're trying to do now. It might have been just at the start of COVID that they were stopping people coming in to smoke. So it was illegal if you was a tourist, but if you lived there, it was legal. And I
Yeah,
was like, how are you going to manage that? That's such a strange thing to control. You're going to have to check everybody. It's bizarre. It seems like a middle step rather than the final play to me. Like, which it doesn't make sense. And I don't know what the follow up to that is. I know it's gone back and forth a few times, but again, I've always wanted to go to Amsterdam, and I've got to go. And then when I looked into it, like it was like, oh, we're going to stop closing it off to tourists. I'm like, oh, well, what's the fucking point?
yeah,
You know?
they've gone backwards and forwards on that a few times. I'm not quite sure where they're at right now, but when I lived there, it was all the coffee shops were open and anybody could go in and do what they like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. I mean, we should follow suit. We should, well, sorry, not follow suit. We should, because of that, we should just go, hey, okay, let's just be the middle ground to that. Let's just open everything up, get a bit wild in some places. Well, because there's some real wild places in the UK. If you go on some coastal places, it's pretty rough. It's pretty frizz.
Yeah, I lived in
Um,
Brighton or through the 70s on and off.
yeah. I was half talking about Brighton.
That was quite a town actually.
Yeah. I've got my I think well I've got friends in Brighton now. I've never been Brighton, which is kind of crazy. I've lived here my whole life. I've never been. It's one of the only few coastal towns I've ever been to. I might have to put it on my list of tourist spots this coming year.
Yeah, it's a pretty progressive town. I always liked Brighton. I come from Crawley originally, which was
I know where Crawley is. Yeah, I know where
real
Crawley
dead
is.
end. That
Yeah.
was a horrible town. I got out of there as quickly as I could, and I moved to Brighton when I was 15. Left
Oh,
school
okay.
and left home and left everything at 15 and went to Brighton. And that was a good move because it was a much better place.
See, it's always I always love talking to people from the UK because I can somewhat relate more. Most of my guests are from America, but obviously you're in America, but you're from the UK.
Canada.
You're from Canada.
No, I'm from England.
Yeah, that's what
I'm
I was.
living I
Yeah, that's
live
what
in
I was saying.
Canada.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's why I can relate. Sometimes I get people. Most of the people that I talk to are from the States.
Right.
Whereas this time I'm talking to you in the States, but you're from the UK.
In Canada.
And you're in Canada, yeah. So
Slightly different country than the States.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I get confusing myself. It's been a long day. This is my second show today. Just putting that out there, people. But I lost my question. But sometimes I enjoy talking to people from the UK because it's easy to relate more. But I know where Crawley is. Do you know where I'm from? A hellhole called Nuneaton.
Nuneaton?
Yeah, you ever heard of that? I'm not.
No.
I don't live there now. Well, you should. You should probably Google it after we come off this show. If you was born and raised in the UK, you'll look into it. It's a tiny little town, just shy of Tamworth, a little bit from Leicester, and Birmingham. Yeah, it's off the A5.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So
I know the area.
yeah, if you're going straight, it's literally straight off the A5. But yeah, that's where I'm from. It's not a great place. You know, we all come from these places, and you never know where you're going to end up. You know.
Yeah, well, there's a reason we don't live in our hometowns anymore. Mine was a hellhole. It was an urban planning disaster area. Couldn't wait to get out. Never went back.
So when you was I mean, I don't want to give too much away from your book, because if you delve into it in your book, then I don't want you to tell stories from your book. But have you got any sort of tales from your past that aren't in your book in terms of drug dealing? You know, without making sure that you don't give anything away for a second book, because I know that's probably going to be in the works.
There is a second book in the works, but
Yeah,
it's not about psychedelics.
Okay.
It's about somebody in a mental asylum plotting their own suicide.
Oh shit, that's pretty dark. Well,
It's a comedy.
it's a comedy.
Well, hopefully I'll have some lighter moments, but
I wish
yeah.
I wished I'd have started laughing like that at the start of the show. I mean, I'll admit, the last show I come off, it was a wild show, so I come in like guns a blazing, and I should have been more serious. But I tied it around, and then now when you say that, that's almost set me back on that same path. It's a suicide, and I was like, oh, it is? And you're like, no, it's a comedy. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, I can't. Do you know? I can't even tell if you're serious or not.
No, I'm absolutely serious.
No, I don't know. It's
going to be called The End of Everything.
Okay, I'm gonna actually look forward to that, because I could imagine that'd be a very good book. Oh, you've made my cheeks hurt. Jesus, that's wild. You're one of these people that that you get me on. Almost got me on the back foot constantly. I'm like, where do we go with this one? Is it being funny? I don't have to be serious. This is one of those.
I'm deadly serious.
I know there's a middle ground to this. I'm on that razor blade edge, and I'm like, it's literally hurting my cheeks. Oh wow. Again, if you'd have seen the questions I'd had on the paper, oh no, bunch of ridiculousness.
What was the last question on your list, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, we're down for an hour. Okay, that's cool. No, I won't do the last one on the list. We'll keep it serious. What I would like to do is, I'd love to get you back on to actually talk seriousness. Like I say, some of my shows are actually more professional than this, where I actually don't drink, I don't get high. You know, I just have a genuine interview. I've tried to keep it this way, and I'm actually sorry that I couldn't keep it. I've tried to. We've tried to keep it as best as. What things would you recommend to listeners that want to read about psychedelics, such as myself? Because I love reading and I love looking into documentaries, but I've pretty seen every documentary about mushrooms and psychedelics that there is. So what kind of books would you recommend?
I just read The Politics of Ecstasy last week, actually, by Timothy Leary.
Okay, hold on.
And he's a pretty crazy guy. One book that I would recommend is Timothy Leary's autobiography.
Okay.
It's called Flashbacks. And it's one of the most incredible, wild stories that you'll ever come across. I mean, his life was just unbelievably, just one crazy adventure after another. It's hard to believe, but it's it's true because it's well documented. So yeah, I would highly recommend that book. I'm just finishing a book called Novel with Cocaine
Ooh.
that was written by an anonymous Russian author who sent the manuscript to a French journal in 1917. They sat on it for years and it finally got translated, but it's just beautifully written, like in this Russian,
What's the author
typical
of that?
Russian prose. M.
Oh,
Anjanev. But that's not his real name. It's a fake name. But
okay. I'll
nobody
find it.
nobody knows who wrote it. But it's a fascinating read and it's brilliantly written. I love Russian literature. I love the
One
way the Russians write.
one thing before we'll round up. Have you ever heard of Howard Marks?
Hmm.
You ever read his book of dope stories?
Yes.
That's a fantastic book. It's I read it many years ago.
Yeah, it was a really good movie too. Called
Yeah, with
Mr. Nice.
Mr. Nice with Reese Ifans. Yeah,
That was a great movie. I really enjoyed it.
yeah, he played the role very well.
Very, very
Um,
well.
very, very well. He's a very interesting character. Um, and I love to put recommendations out there. I can't recommend it to you now because I knew you'd know it, but I was hoping that you would. The fact that you've read Book of Dope Stories is the thing that I loved about Book of Dope Stories is that it's experts of different stories, and then when you go in to look at those other you can break it down into probably, it's got to be about 40 books, maybe. I don't know, maybe more, because they're all experts of stuff. You know, there's got to be around 40,
Well, the
50.
two books that I mostly recommend is Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer and Rave Culture and Insider's Overview. Everything you need to know about psychedelics.
No, they're all good plugs. I'm glad. The one thing I am glad is during all my fuckeries, people know I'll always fuck up. It's all good, and people will respect you for the professional that you are,
Hmm.
and and realize that I fucked up this time. I should have come in professional. But one thing I would love to do is I'd love to get you back on for another interview. Now when I know. The problem is, like I said, I'd come off another show and I was so charged, and I was like, let's fucking get wild, and that wasn't the case. like, so I'd like to actually get you back on, because I know there's a bunch of actual stuff. Now we've had this first sort of podcast. I know my angle I want to come at this at in
Yeah,
terms of
and maybe you should read my book.
Oh, I know I will. I will
Then
read
you'd
the
have a
book.
lot to talk about.
Oh no, I will. Don't you worry. The problem is, it's I didn't get a. I don't think in that first email I got the book. It's just been so long, and then obviously we spoke a few days ago. But I will read the book. Trust me. Every author that's been on, I've read their books.
All
Um,
right.
every single one. And
Write
some
me
of
a
them have.
review on Amazon.
Oh well, if you want to purchase it, I can purchase it right now if you want.
All
I don't
right.
mind. I've got a few transactions I need to do after this show. I don't mind. I'll purchase it. Don't you worry. Um, one thing I will say is because I've got a few books that are being sent. I like to get signed copies of books because I want to get when I change studios, is I want a bookshelf of all the authors. So if I purchase said book, is there any way that you can sign it, or is it in some distribution center?
Well, if you get it off Amazon, it'll come as a print on demand, so
Mm.
you won't be able to sign it. So
That's the thing that was the problem. I'm gonna have to purchase it from yourself. You got a copy to hand? Oh, PayPal it. I don't know. Oh, bank charge you. I don't give a shit. Again, I always like to have books to hand.
well, shoot me an email and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll work it out. Well, listen. You've done many plugs. This has been almost an era of a show on my part for the first time. I mean, I'm 60 in now. I knew it was to come. I think I salvaged it. I don't know. We'll see.
It is what it is, and people can make of it what they make of it.
Yeah, well, they will. They'll know midway through my energy. They were like, "Whoa," you know. I just didn't realize it was me. Maybe I'm just being critical of myself. I don't know. Who knows? Well, listen, it's been very fun to have you on.
Okay.
Next time I'll have a whole massive preloaded different questions that were non-relatable to fucked up drug stories.
Okay.
That's kind of, I was trying to get a different leverage. I don't know. And yeah, that's all I've got to say. I don't think I can say much more than that. Apart
Okay.
from,
Well, thanks for having me, and read the book, and then we'll have another conversation maybe.
no, we will. Oh, maybe. Oh, that was it. I knew I ruined it. This has been the Posthuman podcast. Take it easy, people. Thank you very much.
Cheers.